Today I have Sarath Boppudi, and he is an enterprise cloud data and AI architect and the author of Solution Architecture Framework. So with an extensive experience delivering large-scale cloud and platform initiatives in complex and also regulated environments, Sarath focuses on helping organizations make that clear, defensible, architecture decisions that bring together strategy and execution. So today, Sarath is going to discuss the motivation behind the book and all the challenges that you faces the modern architects, and how your solution architecture framework can help practitioners navigate that complexity, the alignment that you need with stakeholders, and how you can deliver outcomes with the confidence that's required, I guess. So, Sarath, how did you and why did you, I suppose, write this book?
Hi, Nigel. Look, I read this book after repeatedly seeing the same patterns happening across different organizations and industries. I was seeing where a situation where architects were being asked to come up with high-impact solutions or decisions, often under extreme time pressures. This is something I experienced in a couple of my projects as well, but there wasn't a constant structure or guidance to help you get to the decision or to a solution in a practical time. Most existing frameworks like TOGAF and other frameworks as well are either overly theoretical or overly artifact-based. What was missing was a practical approach or practical way to reason through the complexity and to make decisions explicit and align those decisions with the right stakeholders. At the end of the day, this book, one of the outcomes from this book is to get a formalized approach so architecture or architects don't have to reinvent it on every project.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. And I guess that old question is, what problem does the book specifically aim to solve?
So the core problem the book is looking to solve is inconsistent and opaque architectural decision-making. In many organizations, architecture decisions live in someone's head, slide decks, or disconnected documents, with the potential to becoming siloed. This leads to rework, governance friction, and a lack of confidence, especially when decisions are later challenged. The framework in the book helps architects structure their thinking, make decisions traceable, and clearly explains why a solution appears as it does.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess, who is this book specifically written for?
The book is primarily written for solution architects, enterprise architects, and cloud architects who operate in real delivery environments. That said, I've also written it to be accessible to senior engineers and technology leaders who are regularly involved in architecture or architectural decision-making, but may not formally sit in an architecture role.
Yeah, I can understand that, particularly with some of the diagrams that you have that are really important. So does the book introduce a framework that readers can really apply in their organizations?
Yes, it does. So the book itself introduces the Solution Architecture Framework, or SolAF for short. It's designed to be reusable and adaptable. Readers can apply it at different levels of complexity across cloud, data, AI, and hybrid environments, alongside existing organizational standards. Importantly, it's not a prescriptive about tools or vendors. It's a thinking framework that produces better outcomes regardless of technology's choices. One other thing I would add to that is the book talks specifically around, gives examples using Microsoft Cloud environments, but it is meant to become vendor agnostic and be used regardless of solutions or regardless of cloud providers.
Yeah, it's good to have a practical example, though, isn't it, to really bring it out. and that's what you've done with Microsoft. So can you briefly explain how the framework works?
At a high level, the framework begins with a clear problem statement and context definition, then proceeds through domain impacts, decision points, and constraints. A key focus is making decisions explicitly early, rather than discovering them late during delivery or governance reviews. Governance and delivery considerations are treated as first-class inputs rather than afterthoughts. The result is an architecture that is easier to defend, implement, and evolve.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If you can grab and work out those decisions early, much better than finding out a lot later, and maybe too late, when you find out those problems too late. So how does the solution architecture framework relate to other frameworks like TOGAF or that Microsoft CAF, which is the Cloud Architecture Framework?
So the solution architecture framework that I've written is not a replacement for existing frameworks like TOGAF or the Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework. The TOGAF and Cloud Adoption frameworks provide a robust structure at the enterprise or platform level. What my document is looking to do is add a practical execution layer that helps architects move from intent to implementable solutions. Readers can use the solution architecture framework within their existing TOGAF Cloud Adoption Framework or ArchiMate practices already. So it's not meant to replace your existing practices. It just gives you a bit more help.
Yeah, that makes sense, and you can wield it into the existing frameworks. That's great. So, have you applied this framework to real projects?
Yes, I have in my previous project. The framework was shaped through real delivery work, large cloud platforms, regulated environments, and multi-stakeholder programs. It evolved by addressing real constraints, time pressures, governance scrutiny, and delivery risk. This isn't a framework that was designed in isolation. It was refined through practice.
Yeah, that's really good. Can you share one example where the framework really made that difference?
Sure. So I was working on a large-scale platform initiative recently. There were repeated disagreements among the architecture and security and delivery teams. By applying this framework, we made the decision points explicitly early. We defined what was mandatory, what was negotiable, and why certain trade-offs were made. That clarity reduced significant rework and improved confidence at the executive level as we went into delivery. The biggest change we noticed as we were going through that process wasn't technical, it was shared understanding. And I'm hoping that the findings that we got out of that project helped drive this some of the aspects of this book.
And what outcomes can your readers really expect when they apply that framework?
So once you start applying the framework, you'll see a number of benefits. One is clearer architectural reasoning, or clearer architectural reasoning, stronger stakeholder conversations, reduced delivery friction, and better alignment between strategy and implementation. Perhaps most importantly, they gain confidence in defending those decisions, not because they're perfect, but they're because deliberate.
Yeah, it's really a different book. It's really practical and everything. So what makes this book really different, I guess, from other architecture books that are out there?
So most architecture books focus on theory, tools, or reference models. This book examines how architects think and decide in real-world environments, technology's constraints, trade-offs, and organizational realities. It's written by a practitioner for practitioners. Or to put it another way, a book for solution architects by a solution architect.
Yeah, exactly. And why is this book particularly relevant now?
There are a couple of reasons for that. So at the moment, we are operating in an environment of great change. You're looking at cloud projects that are happening. AI adoption is kicking off the ground. There's a lot of regulatory pressures, and there's delivery speed expectations. In that context, architects need to be enable decision making at scale and not impede it. This book is about helping those architects stay relevant and effective within that reality.
And I guess the question to ask you really is, if readers can take away one key idea from the book, what would that be?
Well, the key takeaway should be that good architecture is not about being right. It's about being intentional and explainable. When decisions are clear, traceable, teams move faster, governance becomes easier, and outcomes improve. Remember, at the end of the day, these solutions are meant to last an organization, for at least 5 years, 10 years, even longer. It's to make sure that your solutions are robust enough that they will scale as new technologies come into the picture.
Yeah, really to make that sustainable change that's required. So how should readers approach the book?
The book itself can be read end to end, but it's also designed to be used selectively. Users can use it as a reference, returning to specific sections when framing a problem or preparing for design reviews.
So really the book, you could have it as a daily guide, weekly guide when needed to bring in to something that could apply for their work, I guess. So where can people learn more and find your book?
So the book is available on Amazon, and I will also share some related insights and examples through my website and professional channels. The link to which will be in Amazon as well as Buzz, so you can pick it up from there.
Yeah.
Alternatively, you can reach out to me directly on my email address, and we can have a conversation there, or on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah, thanks, Sarath. And it's really the book is less about prescribing those answers. It's more about helping all those architects out there ask better questions.
Yes, I would agree. Look, like I said, for my projects, I've always found that asking good questions helps you as an architect come up with a valid or a right answer, or a defendable answer for your organization to meet their requirements and expectations. I've written this book so that it actually gives you or gets you started thinking on that journey, and also helps you drive that conversation with your stakeholders or with your clients to get them to actually think about what they want as a requirement from solutions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.